So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our Wisconsin hometown speaker, Mr. Tome Farley. Tom is no stranger to Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, or Wisconsin for that matter. He grew up in Madison and graduated from Georgetown University with a degree in marketing. He began his career in banking and finance, living and working in New York City area. From 1992 to 2012, he ran the Chris Farley Foundation, a nationally recognized nonprofit dedicated to substance abuse prevention. Like his brother, Tom was successful in opening the eyes and ears of youth audience through the powerful and effective use of humor. In 2008, he wrote The Chris Farley Show, a New York Times best-selling biography of his late brother, the actor and comedian Chris Farley. He has been interviewed on The Today Show, Good Morning America, Larry King Live, Fox News, and The View. He has also been featured in People Magazine, USA Today, and several national and regionally newspapers and publications. Today, Tom is a motivational speaker delivering messages on prevention and recovery and the use of improv as a tool to foster better communication in business. Tom lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and continues to influence his lives daily, like ours here at Wisconsin Voices for Recovery. Tome Farley, everyone.
All right, am I unmuted? Live and on the air. Wow, this is great. This was so much fun. This is interesting and new. Usually when I speak at the recovery rally, it's down at the Capitol and on the square with farmers market going on around us, and gives me an opportunity to heckle the people, at the farmers market. I always enjoyed doing that. Put down the zucchini, come up here and talk and listen to me. So don't have that now. I'm actually in my car. I'm on the road. But I can feel you all here, and this is great. So, yeah, it's been a tough year, hasn't it? It's kind of been interesting. I have to say, I'm actually I was a little bit more prepared for this whole COVID thing than most people, because, when I grew up, there were so many times when I was sent to my room for the afternoon because of something my brother Chris did, through no fault of my own, but there we were in isolation together, and we had to spend the whole day figuring out kind of what to do. What was kind of interesting, and we went through all the ranges of emotions that we've seen here in this COVID environment. We had anger that I had anger that Chris kind of got me into trouble in the first place, and sent me to my room for the afternoon. There was, silence. We just kind of sat there and on our beds, just kind of not engaging each other and not doing anything. And then, over time, we started to contemplate a little, and then we started to innovate a little. And we spent the rest of the afternoon trying to figure out how we were going to spend, the rest of the day, locked up together as we were, how we were going to make it go and how it was going to be fun. And for us, it always ended up in laughter. So we always ended up really having a good time. And that's pretty much kind of the way this COVID's been. Without laughter, I don't think I could have gotten through any of it. So as I said, I was certainly prepared, thanks to Chris. But it got me also thinking about all the things, experiences that I had with Chris growing up, and all the lessons that they created. And, I've been pretty amazed of late at how aptly they all apply to today, to life. So I'd like to share some of those lessons with all of you today. One of the first things, I learned from Chris was the concept of finding your lane. And watching Chris grow up, Chris was like a lot of kids, a lot of guys, certainly in Wisconsin, growing up, we had one choice. We had to figure out what sport we were going to play, and that was it. And Chris played football. He loved it. And, he was, really good at he loved the teamwork, and he loved the hitting and the exercise and the exhilaration. but he was also the funny guy on the team. So he was always also the kid, in practice with his helmet on backwards, pants pulled up to his chin, running around, just being a nut. And the teammates loved him. But then he got to school at Marquette, he got into college, and he just, finally dawned on him that academics wasn't really his thing. So he wanted to leave, and he talked to a dean, and the dean said, "Look, your parents really want you to stay and get a degree, so we got to find a way to keep you here and keep you motivated to stay in school." And then he said, "Chris, why don't you go out for a play?" And Chris goes, because guys play sports. I don't know what you're talking about. But he respected this guy, this dean, and so he went out for a play. And I remember him describing, he had this little part. He played a policeman. He was off in the corner of the stage in a cop uniform and not had a lot of lines, but he felt this real interesting commonality with sports. The people that he was on stage with were just like his teammates. There was that camaraderie and that challenge that they were all going through at the same time and together. And the people in the audience were just like the people in the stands. And instead of like applause, every couple downs, he was getting it all the time. He was getting this constant affirmation from the people that were watching that, yes, you're good, you're funny, we love you, we think you're great. So, and he started to find out that he wasn't an athlete that happened to be very funny. He was a very gifted actor that happened to be very athletic. So for him, he finally found his lane. He just had to turn it around. And it was the same person. He was motivated by the same things, and his passions were fed by the same types of things, but he had them backwards. And once he found that, he was, off to the races. So when I started the foundation, I would just go into schools, and I was trying to talk to kids. Right after Chris died, I wanted to speak to people about the lessons I learned, and don't do what Chris did, that kind of thing. But it didn't feel natural for me, because prevention back then as it is today was delivered in schools, and it was information based. It was about education, and I knew that wasn't my lane. I kind of sensed that kids needed a tool. They had this great, so many people were out there giving them great information, so they didn't need me to do that. But I did see that they needed a tool, and so I looked at all my brothers that went through Second City, and I looked at how they were really, really gifted at using their humor to connect with their audiences. And for me, I needed to connect with audiences. And so I looked at improv. Improv is basically, it's a communication tool. It was designed in Chicago years ago by a woman that just wanted to reach out to at-risk kids and inner city kids. And then comedians found it and made it into a cottage industry of humor. But I liked what improv was teaching. It was all based on one rule, which was the rule of yes and. And yes and, it's all about when you're working in a group, somebody offers an idea or something, there's immediate acceptance. And I thought, wow, acceptance, that's a great concept. So I loved that. And I loved the fact that it was communication based. That was my tool. I figured, they had this great information. Now let's use that. And for me, that was communication. And so, and in communication, create better connections. Connections to me obviously was the key. And so I set out and I used improv and teaching improv to create what I called peer enhanced environments rather than peer pressured environments. So, the great thing about improv is it's done in groups and kids run in packs. So it was great. It was teaching them the concept of ensembles. And it's really, and I do this with companies as well. When I talk about improv, I go in and the first thing I say is, we've been drilled on the concept of teams. You got to be a team player, be a part of a team. We need teamwork. And the first thing I would say is forget teams. What you want to do is create ensembles. The problem with teams is, first of all, they're competitive, and that has its place. But with teams, there's always somebody that matters and somebody that doesn't. Think about a football team. When the offense is on the field, they all matter. The defense doesn't. That's not true in ensembles. So, in ensembles, everyone, it's acceptance, and everyone has their own voice and their own style, and they're welcomed into that. And, you can form teams later. You need teams to do a certain project or get something done. But if they're not based on an ensemble, there's some disconnect there. So I loved that concept of ensembles. And one of the things that goes with acceptance in an ensemble is what they do, which is building trust. Because the more you accept people, if you give out an idea in an ensemble and everyone's going to accept it, and I don't mean agree with it, I mean just saying, I heard you, okay, let's continue on that, discussion. That builds trust. And once you have acceptance and trust, you're making your connections become more solid. You're able to collaborate, innovate. In companies, that have good ensemble-based mindsets, it's even great with conflict resolution. So that was kind of my journey with the Chris Farley Foundation. It was kind of interesting going into schools and talking about that. During that time, all that time I was speaking, I realized years later that I was doing great work and I enjoyed it and I was making a difference with kids, but I was really just talking about my brother's journey and his, treatment and recovery, and then some of the, behaviors and pitfalls that he went through. There were many years when I was sober doing that, but that's all I was. And it just recently, when I actually embraced recovery, because every time my stretch of sobriety alone, that lasts 4 to 5 years. I've seen that. And I bounce back every time. This last time, though, embracing recovery and not just walking the walk, but talking the dog, but walking the walk, made a huge difference. So now I get to talk about that with all the other stuff I've always talked about. And, it's funny. I go back to those lessons that I thought of with Chris long ago, and that first one of finding your lane. Growing up, oh my gosh, I literally thought Chris's whole purpose in life was to just completely annoy me as the older brother. I mean, I couldn't imagine it, I remember going to high school. I was a senior, Chris was a sophomore. And I'd be in the hallway, struggling, trying to talk to some girl, failing. And around the corner, I would see my brother and I'd start walking up the hallway. And I went into immediate panic mode because I just didn't know what, he was capable of doing anything. And sure enough, he never failed. He would get up to me, just silently, not saying a word. And then he'd get to me like, hey, Tommy, I saw you wet the bed last night. Mom's really mad. And then just keep walking. And this girl would look at me like, is your family nuts? And I'm like, kind of, yeah, a little bit. So, that was always kind of my thing. Chris was always doing, just stuff. And it was even worse was when my friends would would start laughing and encouraging him. And I would like, don't laugh at him. That's not funny. But I got through all that. And it actually was writing my book on Chris and interviewing all these people in his life that intersected with him at different parts of his life, in college, in Chicago at Second City, in New York at SNL, up at summer camp where we spent most of our youth. They all saw Chris at different stages, at different parts of his life, but they all described the same guy. And so I told Chris's story through all these other people's experiences with Chris, and the end result was I ended up with a better relationship with Chris than I ever did when he was alive. I mean, I understood that he wasn't really trying to push my buttons. It wasn't until I came back to Wisconsin, back to my roots, when I realized, it was, that he was basically saying, Tommy, just be yourself. And it took me such a long time to do that. And recovery has even helped that even further. But for a long time, I was this older, uptight brother that was trying to, live up to expectations, toe the line, do the right thing, dress right. I studied, I did all that stuff. And I watched Chris doing just the opposite of all that stuff. And yet he was making friends, he was being successful, and I couldn't figure it out. He was a guy that was known for creating these amazingly funny characters, but all he was doing was being himself. And I was this, uptight guy trying to live up this caricature, this image that I thought everyone wanted to see of me. And I was struggling, I was failing. It wasn't until that message of find your lane, and really, embrace who you are. And the last part of that particular journey was what I learned in recovery, which is when I started to embrace humility. And that was the final key. Humility was that final kind of unlocking of, finding my lane for me. It was, stop trying to, kind of put out this image or, say the things you think people need to say, or be, stop chasing, this, you have this ego driven, life of yours. And so that was the first gift of recovery in this particular lesson. I couldn't have found my lane if I didn't have the humility that recovery has given me. The second thing was I'm on the whole yes and, I talked that game for so long, and I talked about, how to teach this, communication skill and how to keep people connected, but it was all talk. And it wasn't until, as I said, I was going through it, being sober, but it wasn't until I really got into recovery that I really truly understood the concept of acceptance. Because once I applied it to myself, I understood it. I was like, this is what acceptance is. Oh, wow. So I really, it really kind of made that aha moment that all these things I've been doing for years, teaching improv and yes and acceptance, and all of a sudden, there it was. And then the last thing, I was, talking for years and trying to, this whole, I was literally an evangelist about the concept of ensembles. Build ensembles before you build teams. And again, it wasn't until I got into recovery that I truly understood what an ensemble, felt like. I finally was in an ensemble. It was a fellowship, and it was community, it was connection. And not just, connecting, but helping others, being with others that share this disease. And as I said, one of the things about acceptance is what it does is it helps build trust. And I think one of the concepts of recovery that I clung to right away, because I could totally understand, the difference it was going to make in my life, and that was rigorous honesty. When I started to practice rigorous honesty, then I understood what building trust really meant, because the first thing I needed to do with that honesty was build trust with myself. I had to turn it inward. I had to do it for me. Again, that took a lot of humility, and it produced immediate results. And so trusting myself first, trusting the ensemble, the people around me, the people in this fellowship, and trusting the program. And it's amazing. These three lessons: finding your lane, acceptance, ensemble. Talked about them for years. And it amazes me that recovery was the kind of the key that unlocked the real true meaning of those things for me. So I've really enjoyed continuing to do what I'm doing in the recovery field. I'm still talking to groups like I have been, but it's more authentic now. And to me, and it feels better because I'm actually in recovery myself, and that's been wonderful. I want to talk a little bit, lastly, about just what it's been like recovery in COVID, in the time of COVID. It's been very interesting. But I said early on in this journey of ours in 2020, I sensed that community was going to be redefined, before our eyes, and certainly enough, we've seen that. Going from this fellowship and connection and community in the basement of churches that felt so warm and comfortable, transitioning that over to a Zoom meeting, and the AA Zoom meetings have been amazing. I mean, I went to one this morning. I go to one in the middle of the week down in Illinois, and it's broadened. I can really really dig deeper in my recovery by finding groups that maybe have different themes and stuff. And I love my home group, but I love being able to branch out and walking into a whole different discussion. And so I've loved that. I've loved that aspect of what we've wandered into here in this environment. I love the fact that for once, for finally, the concept of telehealth is expanding. We're really, we're leaning into that. I think is a lot about in this past year is the concept of, and we've built on this, it's kind of a buzzword for, in current times, but the concept of first responder, being a first responder in recovery is, it's just as, wonderful as it is, when you're talking about, EMS and, police and fire, all those other first responders. I remember for me, working in New York, and when Chris got there for his SNL, it was just me and Chris of our family. And when he was really starting to experience the difficulties that his addiction were bringing on, and I had to be that first responder too. And our family, we were obviously our first responders. The problem was, this was 25 years ago, and we were like the EMS workers coming to the scene of an accident with a box of Band-Aids. We had no idea what we were doing as a family, but we also felt that, we're family and we've got to figure this out. And it's up to us. Only we can do this to help Chris. And obviously that has problems because none of us were willing to, address those same issues on ourselves. I mean, Chris might have been the worst of all of us, but that didn't mean that we weren't just, needed the same issue. We didn't have the same issues. Luckily, over the years, one by one, we all have, embraced, recovery when we got there. But back in the time when we were just trying to help Chris and we were the first responders, we didn't do it as well as we can. And so now that concept of first responders, wearing the cape and, helping people out, I tell that to people to families and that people are touched with addiction is be that first responder and understand that there are so many great resources out there. An actual professional interventionist in our family would have been amazing. And so those are all over those are readily available now. Sober coaches. I mean, what a great concept. All these great things that we have. And so they're there. It's so much easier to be a first responder in this field of recovery and helping others. It's because we've got so much there. And so I guess that brings me to my last lesson I had with Chris. It actually was really more me going out as a public speaker. One of the first things I realized it is totally unnatural to get out in front of a crowd of people, of 100, 200,000 people, and talk. That's not natural. You may find people that are really good at it, and I've become fairly good at it, but it doesn't mean that I'm not uncomfortable doing it. So I really learned the concept of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that never mattered so much in this, year of COVID, is that, it is uncomfortable. It's been very uncomfortable, but it's life, and it's going to be with us for a while. And there's things that have come out of it that are good. So I've learned to embrace that even now in this pandemic is be comfortable being uncomfortable, because you can't, it's that whole, accept the things you cannot change. And that's exactly what being comfortable being uncomfortable is. It does, life's uncomfortable. So embrace that and do that. And again, I would say always remember that concept of yes and. Somebody said to me early on that, when you're in a conversation, when actors are on the stage doing improv and somebody throws out a scene, you say yes to it. It's that acceptance. You say it's a gift. And that's the way I've come to look at recovery. It's a gift. And it's a gift that only acceptance brought to me, so it's been an interesting journey. As I said, talking about somebody else's recovery to now talking about my own, but the concepts are all the same, and was all there right in front of my eyes the whole time. So making that full connection to me this last couple of years has made all the difference. And I would, I had a quote I've always kept close to me, that I read a book in college, and it was a book by Dag Hammarskjöld, who was a Secretary General of the UN in the 60s, and he was a big hiker. And he would, it was this book called Markings, and these were his thoughts when he was on the trail. And it was a wonderful book, but there was one quote that stuck with me, and I will never forget it. And the quote, he was halfway up a mountain, and he was kind of looked down the mountain, he looked ahead, and he said, "For all that has been, thanks. For all that will be, yes. And to me, that's what recovery is. I wouldn't be here if if all those things before me hadn't occurred. So I don't look back with regret. I look back with humility and gratitude. Thank you. Here I am. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my journey. So for all that has been, thanks. And that thanks that I'm saying is to my higher power, just like Amshield was talking to the same person. And the beauty of it is that the way I look at recovery is yes to all that will come. And so yeah, so I love that quote, and I keep that with me, and that's my story. That's kind of where I've been, and I just love the every day somebody else said to me, and all these wonderful things that come out of meetings and stuff. And it's kind of maybe it's a Buddhist thought where if you look back, looking back creates regret. Looking forward creates stress and anxiety. So just be here, and I love that. I love that being here. I love being here with everyone here on this great rally. It's been a lot of fun. Again, I wish I could. I wish we could all be there in person. I'd certainly be a lot more. I'm not really as funny as I would like to be on Zoom because everyone's muted and I can't hear anyone's laughter. So I keep it very serious. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone in recovery. Made a huge difference in my life. So I'm going to wrap it up there and just say thank you, and I appreciate you all.